Story 1. That my mom and my mom's side of the family made me believe that my dad was a bad person, and for the majority of my life up until recently, it ruined my relationship with him. I dreaded being around my dad, even though he doted on me my whole life. Through therapy, I found out my mom is a covert narcissist. My dad and I are super close now. Story 2. That their hidden stash of holiday gifts was never really hidden. Found it when I was 12, pretended to be surprised every Christmas and birthday since. Some secrets are just sweeter kept. Story 3. When I was in college, I sold edibles. One day, I came home from school, and my apartment was broken into, and my edibles and Xbox were stolen. I obviously couldn't tell my parents, and I don't think I ever will. Story 4. I'm so grateful for all their assistance supporting me through college, but I think I made a mistake and wish I had gone through a different career path. Story 5. The only reason I didn't try to end my life while in college years ago is because I realized my hardworking immigrant parents probably spent upwards of $300,000 throughout my life, saving money to come to America, working multiple jobs for housing and clothes, and paying for my college. I don't know why the thought of someone missing me if I did it didn't matter, but a wasted investment in me bothered me and made me stick things out. Beyond happy, I stuck around. Story 6. I used to sneak my teenage boyfriend into my room, and he used to sneak me out of school saying he was my older brother. I also snuck up to his house pretending I was going to a movie marathon with my friends. Story 7. When they took my phone and all technology away for a year and a half when I was a teenager, my friend had given me her spare phone and I had it the entire time I was supposed to not have technology or internet access. So whatever effect they wanted their punishment to have turned to nothing. Sorry, Mom. Story 8. My father once said he was very disappointed in me because I didn't follow in his footsteps. Be a certified public accountant with multiple degrees, have a wife, live in a mansion, have 2.5 kids, and a house in the country. I never did tell him that I went a different way because that's what he wanted. Story 9. My father passed away when I was very young. My mother passed when I was 36, and I am 51 now. Since both parents have passed, I really wish I had a sibling or two. Story 10. Every secret I have is dying with me. Not because I wouldn't confess, but because one parent is dead and the other disowned me 20 years ago for introducing him to my first girlfriend. Story 11. The reason I'm obsessed with keeping my home clean and tidy for my family and freak out when, for some reason, I can't, is because I hated growing up in a messy house. I used to cry so much because it was so messy, and they would not help me clean. I get sad when I visit now and see every surface they're cluttered. Story 12. I use Reddit. Both of my parents hate me talking to people online because they think I'm going to get kidnapped or raped or something, so I'm not allowed to post, comment, or like anything by people they don't know. Story 13. I found out my mom almost didn't marry my dad because of something he said to her the day before their wedding. She gave her ring back to him and everything. Obviously, my existence means she went ahead with it anyway. It was supposed to be a secret that goes to the grave with them, but I found out about this and about what he said to her from the one witness of the event, Mom's maid of honor, her identical twin sister. I won't repeat it here, but 40 years later, I can tell you my mom made a huge mistake and her life would have been much better if she left my dad. And I lost all respect for my father after hearing it. Story 14. I am a nudist and very active in the community. It has been a huge part of my life for almost 15 years now. I have never told my parents. They even met my ex that I knew from a nudist resort, and I had her memorize a fake backstory of how we met. Story 15. I once went home from school during the lunch break because I had forgotten my gym clothes. When I got home, I realized I had left the key for the house in my bag, which I didn't bring back home. I got mad and kicked a soccer ball lying around in the garden really hard. It hit a window in a door at the back of the house, causing the outer pane of the double-paned window to shatter. I was maybe 10 years old then, and I never told either of my parents what happened, and I can't now since they both passed. Story 16. My mother received as a gift a Venetian mask from a coworker who traveled to Venice. She hung that mask on the wall in our hall. One day, I was distracted and bumped into the mask, which fell and broke into pieces. I picked up all the pieces, hid them in my things, and only got rid of them when I moved years later. She suspected, but I never confirmed anything. Story 17. At 18, I had a miscarriage. My then boyfriend, who was 20, had waited until I was almost 18 to ask me out and then suggested I move into his dad's house with him, almost an hour away from my family. I had no driver's license and was still in school. He drove me there every day. I also had no job at this time. Eventually, I was pregnant. He never took me to the doctor or anything, and I was afraid to tell anyone. One day, I had an awful fever and cramps that felt like my insides were on fire in a garbage disposal. I was going through an overnight pad every hour or two due to bleeding. Mother's intuition kicked in, and my mom called me about 3 hours into it. I told her some of what was going on, and she asked if I was pregnant or having a miscarriage, and I said no. After another 4 hours of pain and my mom checking in, I finally convinced him to take me to the hospital, where they confirmed it. They said I needed to head to a different hospital to ensure I fully delivered and had no other problems. He didn't take me. I'm now 28. I never told my parents what happened, nor have I told the full story to anyone. I did eventually leave him, by the way. After all that had happened, I had told him I didn't want to risk it happening again, and I woke up to him raping me. I moved back home and broke up over text. I actually never went to get checked, and anytime I've been to the doctors, it doesn't seem like it's on my record because they never ask about it. The silver lining is that I'm at peace with the situation and even try to help others. Story 18. Chuckling as I even try to come up with just one. There's a lot of stuff my parents just don't need to ever know. On the darker side, sexual abuse as a child. The abuser is dead, so not a threat to anyone else anymore. On the lighter side, lots of teenage antics. I'm not sure they really need to hear about the time I snuck out overnight and took LSD in the park. We made friends with a raccoon family and later had kinky group sex, not with the raccoons. Oh, and that broken lamp wasn't the cat. It was me, but I'll never admit it. Story 19. That I don't really like them. I love them. They are my parents and they are not horrible people, but they are not nice people and I really don't enjoy being in their company. Story 20. I hate them. I had to raise myself and also be their emotional support. My older siblings were and still are equally useless. I got a part-time job at 15 and a car. I basically raised, fed, and clothed myself until I could move out 1 week after graduating. I haven't looked back. I don't live near them and have no desire to see them. I will sometimes answer the phone, but even then my commitment and engagement are limited and on my terms. Story 21. Well, they are dead. But if I played the Ouija board, I would tell them that I skipped school to smoke weed. If cabinets and windows start opening, I know they heard me. Story 22. I'm really happy to only see them once or twice a year due to living 3,000 miles away. I just can't stand them. They all gossip and talk bad and spin their wheels so much you can't even have a normal conversation with any of them. It's all drama and always has been. I never understood how and why I was so depressed my entire life. Found escapism through alcohol and partying. Since I've lived across the country, I'm sober, have a super awesome family, and I barely ever see them. It's great. Story 23. I'm 51 years old. My parents are 80. And I will never tell them I was doing acid and mushrooms fairly regularly starting at 15 years old. I think that would freak them out too much. Story 24. I'll never tell my dad how much his family hates my stepmother. When I became an adult, they all gave me their condolences on having her as a stepmom. I wish they had told me this when I was younger because it would have been a comfort, but I can admit I probably would have said something, so I understand why they didn't. Story 25. I broke my turn signal light cap by being tired and backing out badly. I scraped it against an old beat-up pickup truck, rusted and dented before me, in the high school parking lot. I couldn't make out if the other car had damage, so I picked up the remains of my light glass cap and went home and lied that someone hit my car in the school parking lot. My dad called the school demanding video footage for the car insurance, and thank God the school did not have video. My car was a piece of junk, and the insurance guy literally told my dad it would cost more than the whole car is worth to even fix the issue. Story 26. Dropping adult problems on me, forcing me to play referee during arguments from a young age, has severely damaged my ability to have a normal relationship. Story 27. The extent of the sexual abuse they failed to protect us from. Dad passed 10 years ago, and mom's starting to slip into dementia. I don't see any point in telling her now. Story 28. I'll never confess to my parents that during my second year of college, I completely burned out and dropped out for almost an entire year without telling them. I couldn't handle the pressure, and instead of asking for help, I used the tuition money they gave me to try and start a small business selling refurbished electronics. I failed miserably because I didn't know what I was doing, and I ended up losing all the money. Since then, I've been working extra hours and taking out loans to pay it back without them noticing. Every time they ask about my grades or classes, I feel sick to my stomach, but I always lie and tell them things are fine. Still, none of that compares to the time my dad beat me with jumper cables. Story 29. That I think they are horrible people who seem to believe occasional financial support is enough for me to forget past abuse. And I completely consciously use them for that support because I certainly did not forget and do not love them. I might as well extract some use from them. Story 30. I often thought about removing them from my life. They aren't abusive or bad people, but they just constantly argue, fight, and complain while never doing anything to improve their situation. I feel guilty feeling this way, but I'm so burned out from dealing with it. Story 31. That I wish they had never given birth to me. They are horrible parents, and growing up then and living now is a miserable existence. My mother should never have raised children. Nothing about life is good when you grow up abused, neglected, and unloved. It doesn't fix itself when you find love. You carry that forever, and I am tired. I'm here only because I will not hurt my children that way. I'm not too concerned otherwise. Groundhog Day is my life. I open my eyes, annoyed that I'm still breathing. I go to sleep hoping I never wake up. I hate the world and division, and I realize that joy isn't real for me anymore. I still love my mom, so I just go through life stuck. Alone in a crowded room is a special kind of lonely. Story 32. It took me a long time to realize how mean you are. I feel an obligation to take care of you in your old age, but I don't like you, much less love you. You are very nice to my kids, but still mean to me, and I'm scared of the day they upset you by not conforming to your expectations. You will distance them like you distanced me, and I dread having to hear you complain when they eventually cut you off. I may mechanically tell you I love you when you say it to me, but we are far from it. I don't know whose passing I look forward to more, yours or my own. Story 33. For what it is worth, I was determined to not repeat the mistakes I saw in my parents and was paying close enough attention to watch myself make entirely different ones. Story 34. I will never tell my mom that my brother took her truck when she was out of town. He drove to Oklahoma when he was 15 and on mushrooms. I didn't know until he got back. I didn't live at home at the time. I'll never ever snitch on him, but that was scary to hear. Story 35. Kinda sad. Please don't judge me. When they first caught me hurting myself, I never stopped. I still did it until they caught me again last year in January, and I still haven't stopped. Their reactions made it so much worse and much harder to stop. Story 36. The reason why I never want to have children is because my mom and stepdad, convinced me that it was in my best interest to place my son for adoption because it wouldn't look good to the rest of the family that I was an unwed mother of a biracial child. This happened in October 2007 when I was 23, about to be 24. Although my relationship with my mom and stepdad is a lot better now, a big part of me will never forgive my mom and stepdad for turning their backs on me when I needed them the most. Story 37. That them divorcing was absolutely no problem for me. The not talking to each other and making me a messenger between them for everything while dumping their emotions over the split up on me, and bad-mouthing each other to me, messed me up really badly for a long time. I was 6. Why did I have to be your therapist? Story 38. To my mother. In your anger and insecurity, I have seen you say so many mean, petty, and critical things about your neighbors, your relatives, your colleagues, my father's colleagues, my old girlfriends, my current wife, my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and sister-in-law, and even my neighbors whom you hardly know, that I wonder if you have ever been self-aware enough to realize that you epitomize the expression. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Story 39. I don't think I can confess to my mother how much she has damaged my life. She is quite old, and I'm afraid of what the truth would do to her. I grew up in a religious cult, which was her choice. She eventually divorced Dad for no good reason when I entered puberty, taking me far away. My father lost almost everything. I suppose I did as well. These two key moments were my personal Hiroshima and Nagasaki and were attributed solely to her decisions. Don't get me wrong. I take full responsibility for the decisions I've made in my life, but those decisions were built on very shaky foundations that she helped forge. Story 40. When I was in my teens, my stepdad would beat me, frame me for his wrongdoings, and steal my money and other things. I was tired of this, so I stole a pistol from my dad and successfully hid it away. That night, my mom and stepdad called us out into the living room to tell us that they were divorcing and he was moving out the next day. To this day, nobody knows that he was about 12 hours away from me just shooting him. My biggest internal debate was whether or not I would just shoot him in the back of the head at the breakfast table before I went to school, or let him see it coming and beg for his life. That wouldn't have worked. I just wanted him to beg unsuccessfully. I managed to return the gun to my dad after I was sure my stepdad had moved out. I didn't even care that I would wind up in prison for cold-bloodedly shooting him. I just wanted the abuse to end.